Hello there and welcome to Wednesday in Parliament. Coming up, after the Prime Minister's Brexit speech, the Labour leader challenges Theresa May on her EU exit plans.
Can I urge her to stop her threat of a bargain basement Brexit?
I've got a plan. He doesn't have a clue.
MPs demand the government do more to help a persecuted minority in Myanmar.
According to reports, the minority group have been subject to arson, rape and murder.
MPs talk to the supermarkets about why we waste so much food. And pretty much everyone hates theirs, but could we be about to enter a new era for the passport photo?
Any of us can send essentially a selfie to the passport order office to form our passport.
But first, there'd been mutterings in the Commons on Tuesday after Theresa May decided to make her big Brexit speech not in the chamber, but to an outside audience. So, Prime Minister's Questions was the first chance for MPs to grill her directly on her 12-point plan. In her speech, Theresa May made clear that the UK would not stay in the single market, that MPs and peers would get a vote on the final exit deal, and insisted that no deal was better than a bad deal for Britain. The Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, began with a swipe at the Prime Minister for not setting out her plans in Parliament.
Restoring parliamentary democracy while sidelining Parliament. Mr. Speaker, it's not so much the Iron Lady as the Irony Lady. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister finally provided some detail. Can I urge her to stop her threat of a bargain basement Brexit? A low-pay tax haven on the shores of Europe. It won't necessarily damage the EU, but it would certainly damage this country, businesses, jobs and public service. She demeans herself and her office and our country's standing by making these kind of threats.
What I set out yesterday was a plan for a global Britain, bringing prosperity to this country and jobs to people and spreading economic growth across the country. But actually yesterday we also learned a little more of the Right Honourable Gentleman's thinking on this issue. What he said was the following. She has said that leave the single market, then at the same time says she wants to have access to the single market. I'm not quite sure how that's going to go down in Europe. I think we have to have a deal that ensures we have access to the market. I've got a plan. He doesn't have a clue.
Last year, the Prime Minister said leaving the single market would make trade deals considerably harder. And while we could certainly negotiate our own trade agreements, there would be no guarantee that they would be on terms as good as those we now enjoy. But yesterday, the Prime Minister only offered us vague guarantees. Can I ask her, does she now disagree with herself?
The Right Honourable Gentleman might also have noticed that when I spoke in the Remain campaign, I said that if we voted to leave the European Union, the sky would not fall in. And look at what has happened, actually, to our economic situation since we voted to leave the European Union. But I say he talks about the future of this economy. I want us to be an outward-looking nation, trading around the world, bringing prosperity and jobs here into the United Kingdom. The one thing that would be bad for the economy is the answers that the Right Honourable Gentleman has. He wants a cap on wages, no control on immigration, and to borrow an extra £500 billion. That wouldn't lead to prosperity. That would lead to no jobs, no wages and no skills.
Will the Prime Minister provide a commitment today that no part of the Great Repeal Bill will be subject to English votes for English laws?
The Honourable Lady will know full well that any legislation brought before this House, if any part of it only applies to England, then it will be subject to the English votes on English laws.
It was quite clear from the Prime Minister's speech yesterday that she seeks to build a Brexit consensus and to bring our country back together, and I thank her for that. To that end, and indeed to strengthen the Prime Minister's negotiating hand, before Article 50 is triggered, would she please consider at least publishing all those 12 objectives in a white paper so that we can debate them here in this place on behalf of all our constituents?
Well, my honourable friend is right. I absolutely understand the point that she raised about Parliament's desire to be able to debate those objectives, which I set out very clearly in the plan that I set out yesterday. One of the objectives, one of the principles I set, was about certainty and clarity, and it continues to be the government's intention that we will provide clarity whenever it is possible, and we will ensure that at appropriate times both the public and Parliament are kept informed and are able to consider and properly scrutinise these issues.
In response to the honourable member for Broxtowe, the Prime Minister talked about her desire to give clarity around our exit of the EU. Many of my constituents are European citizens, paying tax here, bringing up their families. What assurance can she give them about their future, particularly if they change employer or are freelancers?
One of the objectives I set out in my speech yesterday was what I have said before, which is about the guaranteeing of rights for EU citizens living here in the UK, but I also want to see the rights of UK citizens living in the 27 member states being guaranteed as well. I remain open, and I would encourage others to agree with me, others across Europe, to agree with me that this is an issue we should look at an early stage, and as early a stage as possible, in order to give people the confidence and reassurance that she is looking for.
How can abandoning membership of the Customs Union that takes 68% of Wales's exports, including crucially 90% of our food and drink exports, and which supports 200,000 jobs, cause anything other than calamitous self-harm?
What we will be doing is negotiating a free trade agreement with the European Union to get the best possible access for trade with the European Union. But we also want to be able to negotiate trade agreements with other countries around the world. A number of countries have already expressed interest in doing that with us. We want to do that to open up and see new export markets being delivered for businesses here in the United Kingdom, including for the sort of trade that he's talking about in Wales.
Theresa May. Well, the arguments on Brexit continued on the committee corridor, where there were calls for the government to immediately guarantee the rights of EU citizens to stay in the UK. During the latest session of the Exiting the European Union Committee, that demand was made by EU nationals living here and by British people living on the continent.
We don't want to be these bargaining chips in the renegotiations, and we feel we're taken hostage. As a population, it's a very strong feeling that people really feel in the communities. We are negotiating capital, we're the main card in negotiation, and this is a political issue about not granting our rights. I think we're human beings. We've got to be treated like human beings.
But our Prime Minister has said she wants to achieve this soon, but in agreement with the rest of Europe. She tried to get agreement to discuss this at the last Council meeting. A lot of European countries wanted to, but Germany and others refused. Are you putting any pressure, or could you tell me what pressure you're putting on your home governments to ensure that they put pressure on the rest of the EU to settle this issue quickly?
Our position of the 3 million is that we want the British government to make the first move, because the UK is leaving the EU, not the other way around. And that decision can only come from the British government, because in the EU, the national governments have been told by the Commission that they can't open any sort of talks or negotiation before Article 50 is triggered. And so it's a bit of a Kafkaesque situation as a result, because no one wants to do the first move. But no one in the EU can make any move because Article 50 hasn't been triggered.
You don't look at all to the Polish, Romanian, other governments at all as having any role in this?
Well, I would say that we are focused on British government because we really believe that they are the party that can make the first move. And
they have.
We live in the UK. Our government is the British government.
We want something to be done as immediately in line with the Prime Minister's speech of yesterday. I think that there should be a resolution on the day that Brexit is triggered. I think there should be a resolution in place by both Houses of Parliament calling on the other member states to make similar arrangements. And of course, this can be prepared by diplomatic channels before that date. There's time between now and the end of March to do that.
Do you agree with the Prime Minister that she should wait for agreement from the other EU countries to protect British citizens living abroad before giving the rights to EU citizens here?
It is the UK which is triggering this process. It is not the other 27 member states. Therefore, it would be a magnanimous gesture on the part of the Prime Minister and a good way of opening the negotiations. Let's remember that when you're negotiating, you should try and offer benefits to the other side. I think it would be an extremely magnanimous gesture to begin by saying, look, we're doing this for the EU nationals in the UK. We call upon you to do the same.
Whatever is decided, it needs to be decided soon, because these people can't wait for 2.5 years to get a resolution. I would prefer that she acted unilaterally now, and I think that would encourage other countries to reciprocate. It will improve relationships at the start of the negotiations, and I don't personally believe, I can't see any reason why the 27 countries wouldn't reciprocate.
You've got a huge displacement crisis, I think, in terms of 1 million people. That's the population of Birmingham, who we can assume, I imagine, that are working in some shape or form, and that are people that may have to look at returning back to the UK or some other arrangements. That doesn't include that they might be married to foreign spouses like myself. If that happened to me, how would my Italian wife get a right to stay in the UK, and my son? So we're talking about splitting families as well.
A Foreign Office Minister has told MPs that Boris Johnson will raise concerns about allegations of human rights abuses in Myanmar when he meets the country's leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, shortly. Thousands of Rohingya Muslims are said to have fled to neighbouring Bangladesh amid allegations that the Burmese army has carried out human rights abuses. Troops took control of the region after armed men raided police posts, killing 9 officers in October. The Minister, Alok Sharma, came to the Commons to answer an urgent question on the situation.
Mr. Speaker, whilst we condemn this attack and recognise the right of the security forces to carry out security operations to root out the perpetrators, we remain deeply concerned by the conduct of the Army in its response. Although restrictions on media, diplomatic and humanitarian access make the facts difficult to ascertain, we have been concerned by numerous reports alleging widespread human rights violations in the security response. We continue to monitor the situation closely, and I can tell the House that my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, will visit Burma very soon and reiterate our concerns across these issues.
It's very difficult to get accurate information for what is happening in Rakhine State. So in order to get to the truth beyond false reports, will he call for full access to independent observers and journalists to villages and displacement camps in Rakhine State?
He asked about UK support for an international commission, I assume a UN-type commission. Can I just say that a UN-led commission of inquiry can be established in one of 3 ways, by either the UN Secretary-General, by the UN Security Council, or by the Human Rights Council. Establishing an inquiry in this way would require broad international support, which we assess does not exist in the current international environment.
The Minister rather sidestepped the question of action in the UN by saying that the government's opinion was there wasn't a sufficient consensus at the present time to take forward action. Can he go rather further than that? Will the government commit to trying to build that consensus as opposed to really remarking that it doesn't exist?
Will the Minister make very clear to the Burmese authorities that their welcome re-entry into the international community will not be helped if they fail to protect minorities, and particularly the Rohingya community?
A Conservative returned to the plight of the Rohingya.
Hundreds are being attacked. Many are being murdered. Their villages are being systematically burnt or destroyed. Many are being sold into slavery with the complicity of Burmese authorities, the very authorities of which treat the Rohingya as a non-people. Now, my honourable friend, the Minister, has avoided the challenge from the Right Honourable Member for Gordon and my honourable friend, the Member for Gillingham, that it is not sufficient for the government to cooperate. The government needs to lead UN support if these reports are true?
Since the Burmese security forces started their campaign in October, it's been estimated that around 65,000 Rohingya Muslims have fled the country. According to reports, the minority group have been subject to arson, rape and murder at the hands of the military. Such allegations are incredibly serious, and it's for that reason I asked the Minister for the fourth time, I believe, if he will continue to call for the establishment of an independent investigation into these claims.
I hope, Mr. Speaker, that I've made clear today that there are a huge number of avenues that we in the UK are pursuing in terms of getting humanitarian aid, in terms of making the case for minorities, and actually making it very clear that we care deeply about these matters. And at the end of the day, that is something that we will keep doing. But going back to this point about the approach from a UN perspective, as I've said, there are a number of areas that the UN is already engaged, and we will continue to work with those and make the case to make sure that there is resolution in this very troubled area.
The Foreign Office Minister, Alok Sharma. You're watching Wednesday in Parliament with me, Alicia McCarthy. Around 8 million tonnes of food, post-manufacture as it's called, is wasted each year in the UK. The Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee is carrying out an inquiry into food waste in England and has been hearing from a panel of supermarket chain representatives. One of the issues that gets a lot of attention is what to do with misshapen fruit and veg that doesn't make the grade. Tesco's told the MPs about its perfectly imperfect range.
What we've typically done, and I know others have done the same, is widened our specification to the point where that is still perfectly edible food and it can be sold usually at a discount. It takes account of the whole crop idea, so when you get a glut or a flush of a specific product, we can then move extra product that would not make our specification normally into this perfectly imperfect world. And pretty much every customer who's ever bought one of those has come back and bought another on the basis that it works as a concept. Where product is still outside the specification, then again, you'll hear a slightly different story from Morrison's because of this vertical integration, but in our world what we do is we facilitate, for example, potatoes that are too big, too small, go to make our recipe dishes. So potato-topped products made by one of our manufacturers are supplied with potatoes that we couldn't possibly sell within the stores because they might be enormous or very tiny, and they utilise that bit of the crop. 165 tonnes or so of spuds this year so far.
We take the manufacturing approach, so anything that is missed the wrong shape or we couldn't sell goes into juices, smoothies, soups is a really big category because obviously we sell a lot of soup, and also our ready meals. So we try to do the same thing, but I guess in a kind of slightly different way because we don't sell it in store unless it's in our basics range.
Morrison said it sold 25,000 tonnes of wonky veg last year.
As of this year, there'll be 13 different types of fruit and vegetable that we sell, which is out of normal spec. Why we're selling more is because customers like it. I think customers are more interested in the whole agenda, and they want to buy more of it, so they can buy it at a lower price or in a bigger bag. But I think particularly because we've taken the extra step to kind of really market it, it's kind of driven that kind of interest from customers, and therefore it's kind of, if you like, pardon the pun, feeding the interest and sales.
But, said a Conservative committee member,
I just wonder why you call these vegetables wonky or misshapen or less than perfect. They are perfect, they're just a different shape. And I think you're contributing, well, I wonder if you are contributing to the problem by referring to them as some kind of weird byproduct. Wouldn't it be better simply to sell them as they are? Because that's what they are. Perfectly good, nutritionally. Why don't do that? Why don't you do that?
I think it helps customers to work out what they're buying in store. So by designating in a particular way, it's clear. So, for example, if you were to buy onions, for example, from our wonky range, they may be more dirty. They may have more dirt on them. The sizes may be different. And if a customer isn't aware that they're buying something slightly different to what they ordinarily might buy, typically then they'll come back and say, well, is this the same product? And start to question, if you like, what we're selling them. So one of the things we're trying to do actually for customers is to be clear about what it is they're buying and then provide the choice. I don't think that's necessary. In fact, what we're trying to do particularly with the way the packaging is designed and in the way that we talk about it, is to talk about it in a very positive way. I don't think it's about saying that it's something that we don't like. And in fact, it may not be perfect, but I don't think anybody around the table is suggesting or trying to suggest through the way that they market these that the fruit and veg is anything other than perfectly good to eat.
If you have a range, and most of us have a range which is usually 3 tiers or 2 tiers, if you introduce another part of the range and don't signal to customers in some way what the purpose of that is, they find it pretty unhelpful and confusing. So we're adding to the choice, we're not just making it wider. And the marketeers have kind of found this way, and in different supermarkets you'll see different responses. It's the same.
Well, we won't dwell on that. People reach their own conclusions, I think.
Simon Hart on wonky veg. Now, millions of us have one, and millions of us hate ours. What am I talking about? Passport photos. The photo booth shockers are the embarrassment of many a seasoned traveller. But could it soon be possible for people to take their own picture, the so-called selfie, and send that in instead?
As I understand it, the government is seeking to arrange that any of us can send essentially a selfie to the passport order office to form our passport. Now, the passport is the gold standard as far as identity assurance in this country is concerned. Why is the opportunity not being taken to prevent a situation in which people can Photoshop images and to make sure there is proper certification of when an image has been taken, that it was duly carried out in a proper way, and that image is a secure and viable basis on which we can prove our identity?
Well, the Noble Lord is absolutely right that security standards are absolutely paramount, whether it's under the old system, shall we call it, or indeed the new digital system. And under both systems, the security standards are exactly the same. Let me reassure the Noble Lord. Just by example, both USA and New Zealand allow people to take their own photograph. In terms of a selfie, a photograph that is identified as a selfie that doesn't meet those security standards and requirements are rejected in the examination process. But that gold standard, as the Noble Lord is right to point out, is absolutely paramount as the robustness and confidence in this very important document goes forward.
Under the old system, as it's called, somebody has to certify on the back of the photograph that it is a true likeness of the passport holder. How is that going to be achieved if it's a completely digital application process?
Well, my lords, the current service that has been in place since April of last year actually is only available at this point in time to adults over the age of 26 who have previously held British passports. So there is the rigour in the new process.
My lord, what is the difference between a dodgy selfie and a genuine selfie?
A dodgy selfie, my lords, is one that does not meet the rigorous requirements of a passport photo.
Finally, the Labour MP Tristram Hunt has made his last parliamentary speech. Mr Hunt, a historian, is leaving to become the director of London's Victoria and Albert Museum. His decision will mean there's to be a by-election in the Stoke-on-Trent Central constituency. Tristram Hunt said goodbye during the afternoon's debate on Brexit and its implications for security, law enforcement and criminal justice.
It has been a profound privilege to represent Stoke-on-Trent Central in this chamber for 6.5 years, and I'd like to place on record my thanks to the Speaker, the clerks of the House, the doorkeepers, staff, and perhaps above all the library staff, whom I fear will now face quite a drop in demand. It perhaps seems particularly perverse to leave the House now, and let me apologise to the political parties and the people of Stoke-on-Trent for inflicting a by-election upon them. But it seems perverse to leave just as this place is about to enjoy the largest return of powers since the Act in Restraint of Appeals.
In case you were wondering, an Act of Parliament way back in 1532, transferring powers from the Catholic Church to Henry VIII. Mr Hunt turned to what the impact of Brexit might be.
And as power and sovereignty is returned to the UK Parliament, I think the question we're debating today, and you will be into the future, is whether we see a Britannia unchanged, forging a new era of free trade, cultural exchange and innovation, or whether the world today, as my right honourable friend for Leeds Central suggested, is so interconnected in terms of economy, security and political power that we have, in leaving the European Union, exposed ourselves to international headwinds that will batter rather than benefit us. And at this stage, we have no answer to that.
The outgoing Labour MP Tristram Hunt. And that's it from me for now, but do join me again at the same time tomorrow for another roundup of the best of the day here at Westminster. But until then, from me, Alicia McCarthy, goodbye.